It began with a tremor. At first, seismic monitors across Asia recorded what looked like an earthquake deep beneath the mountains of North Korea. The reading was sharp, sudden, and precise, 6.3 on the Richter scale, far too symmetrical to be natural. Within minutes, experts knew the truth. Pyongyang had detonated its most powerful nuclear device yet, a warhead buried beneath the granite bones of Mount Mantap. It was a move that shocked the world. But what happened next was something no one, not scientists, not generals, not even the regime itself, had anticipated. The underground blast ripped through the mountain like a spear of fire. Rock vaporized instantly, creating a cavern of unimaginable heat and pressure. For the first few seconds, it looked like every other test, a massive release of energy contained within stone, shaking the earth, rippling through soil and water. But as the pressure wave expanded, instruments monitoring the event picked up anomalies that defied explanation. First, the tremors did not behave as expected. Instead of dissipating evenly, they spiked in irregular bursts, echoing like aftershocks, but occurring far too quickly, almost rhythmically. Seismologists in South Korea and Japan exchanged frantic messages. One described it as the earth ringing like a bell. The mountain wasn't just shaking. It was resonating. Then came the radiation. Satellites designed to detect nuclear signatures caught bursts of gamma radiation far higher than projected, not just escaping from the site, but pulsing outward in waves. These surges stretched far beyond the borders of North Korea, detected as far away as Alaska and Europe. The strange part wasn't their strength, it was their pattern. When charted, the spikes weren't random leaks, but symmetrical bursts, repeating at precise intervals like a coded signal. Minutes after the blast, as governments scrambled to interpret the data, something even stranger happened. A plume of light erupted from the mountain's peak. Witnesses miles away swore they saw the sky glow blue, not like lightning, but like the aurora borealis forced into a single spear of energy. Satellite images confirmed it, a column of plasma rising from the mountain, twisting in the atmosphere before vanishing. It was as though the nuclear detonation had pierced something deeper than rock, something hidden beneath. The world held its breath. North Korea's state media fell silent, offering no explanation. China mobilized troops to its border, fearing radioactive fallout. Japan scrambled jets, prepared for the worst. In Washington, analysts pored over intercepted communications, but even Pyongyang's military seemed caught off guard. Whatever had happened under that mountain wasn't part of the plan. And then came the sound. Across northeastern China and the Korean peninsula, villagers reported hearing a low, unearthly hum that vibrated through their homes, rattling windows and shaking the ground. Some compared it to the droning of an engine buried in the earth. Others swore it felt like a voice, too deep to be human. Audio sensors confirmed the reports. There was a frequency rolling outward from the blast site, steady, deliberate, and mechanical. Scientists raced to explain it. Some argued the detonation had fractured underground caverns, creating resonant chambers that amplified sound. Others dismissed this, pointing out that the hum was too precise, too controlled, repeating in patterns that matched the radiation pulses. It wasn't chaos, it was coordination. The truth became undeniable when infrared satellites captured the mountain itself shifting. Not just cracks, not just landslides, but movement deep underground, as though something massive was stirring beneath the surface. Analysts noted strange heat blooms emerging from fissures miles from the blast site, glowing like veins under skin. Whatever had been dormant inside Mount Mantap had been awakened by the nuclear blast. Within the hour, governments across the world raised their alert levels. Civilian flights were diverted from Korean airspace, naval fleets repositioned, and scientists locked in hushed conferences. A simple nuclear test had spiraled into something far more dangerous. For years, rumors had circulated that North Korea's mountains were more than just test sites. Some whispered of tunnels leading to secret labs, of relics unearthed during mining operations, of phenomena even the regime could not explain. but most dismissed these as fantasies, conspiracy theories with no evidence. Now, as the world stared at glowing fissures, pulsing radiation, and a hum that sounded like the Earth itself was alive, those whispers didn't seem so impossible. The detonation was supposed to be a demonstration of power, a show of strength to the world. Instead, it had torn open something buried, something waiting. And in the seconds after the explosion, as data streamed across satellites and sensors, one chilling fact spread through intelligence circles like wildfire. The nuclear bomb had not just shaken the Earth. It had triggered a response. The world waited for fallout, but what followed was not the drifting haze of radioactive dust. Instead, the skies above Mount Mantap glowed with an eerie pallor, as though the atmosphere itself had been scarred. Satellites recorded ionization levels spiking in bizarre, wave-like surges. Chinese border towns reported compasses spinning, cell towers dropping out, and livestock collapsing as though struck by invisible force. This was not normal radiation leakage. It was something else, something structured. At first, governments scrambled to contain the panic. North Korea's state media released a bland statement, claiming the test had been a complete success and posed no threat to neighbors. But those words rang hollow as independent seismic networks across the globe reported the same anomalies. The Earth had not simply shaken, it had sung. Frequencies too low for human ears echoed across continents, picked up by sensors in Alaska, Norway, and South Africa. Analysts replayed the data again and again. The signal was clear, rhythmic, and deliberate, like the beat of a colossal heart buried deep underground. By the second hour after the blast, events on the surface grew impossible to ignore. Chinese reconnaissance drones flying near the site recorded fissures miles wide opening in the mountain's base. From these cracks oozed not molten rock but a glowing, metallic fluid that shimmered as if alive. The drone's cameras caught the fluid branching across the Earth like roots of a vast tree, moving faster than geology should allow. Within minutes, the feed cut to static. When the drones were recovered, their onboard memory had been wiped clean. International intelligence agencies went into overdrive. In Washington, analysts compared the radiation bursts to past nuclear tests, but the numbers didn't fit any known profile. Instead of decaying, the pulses were strengthening, each wave larger than the last. One cryptographer swore the sequence resembled binary code. "It's not leaking," he said, "it's broadcasting." South Korea reported something even more disturbing. Along the DMZ, surveillance cameras captured strange lights flickering beneath the soil, glowing veins stretching southward, as though the mountain's heartbeat was crawling across borders. Engineers assumed it was thermal distortion, until the lights began to pulse in exact synchrony with the seismic hum. By the third hour, whispers of the unthinkable spread among scientists and generals alike. The nuclear blast hadn't just awakened seismic activity. It had activated something. Theories collided in frantic meetings. Some claimed it was a natural phenomenon, an unknown mineral reacting violently to nuclear energy. Others suggested it was an ancient structure buried deep beneath the mountain, waiting for a spark. And in the darkest corners of intelligence circles, a more chilling theory took root, that what had been stirred was not natural at all. Then came the first confirmed casualty. A North Korean soldier stationed near the blast site stumbled into a Chinese village across the border, clothes torn, skin glowing faintly under ultraviolet light. Witnesses said he collapsed, muttering incoherent words. When medics tried to treat him, every electronic device in the room failed: phones, monitors, even heart rate machines. The man's body vibrated with the same rhythm as the seismic pulses. Within minutes, he was dead. Geiger counters reported no radiation. Instead, they detected bursts of electromagnetic energy pulsing from his corpse, as though he had become a living conduit for the mountain's signal. News of the incident leaked online before authorities could suppress it. Videos of the soldier's body, glowing faintly as it was carried away, spread across forums and social media. Panic ignited across the globe. Was this the beginning of contamination, or proof that the nuclear blast had unleashed something far stranger? Back at the epicenter, satellites captured the most shocking development yet. The peak of Mount Mantap, fractured by the explosion, shifted unnaturally. Entire ridges buckled outward, not from collapse but from pressure building inside. Heat signatures bloomed from deep beneath the surface, forming symmetrical patterns visible even from orbit. To stunned analysts, the images resembled not random fractures but the outline of something vast and mechanical pressing against the crust, trying to emerge. For the first time, the world realized that what happened seconds after the detonation wasn't just an accident or a catastrophe contained within a mountain. It was the start of something larger, something no government could control. And as intelligence networks pieced together the data, one chilling truth spread through whispered channels: the nuclear explosion had not destroyed the mountain. It had unlocked it. By dawn, the mountain was no longer just a mountain. Mount Mantap, once the site of countless underground detonations, now groaned like a living thing. Satellite footage showed fissures expanding across its surface, glowing faintly in the pre-dawn light. The air above shimmered as though distorted by heat, even though ground temperatures were freezing. To the analysts watching in Beijing, Seoul, and Washington, it looked less like geological collapse and more like emergence. Something vast pushing upward through the earth. Inside North Korea, silence reigned. No statements from Pyongyang, no triumphant propaganda broadcasts. The absence itself was louder than any speech. Intelligence chatter suggested the regime was in chaos. Entire military units had been ordered to surround the site, but within hours, many of those soldiers had gone silent, their radios transmitting nothing but static. The few garbled transmissions that did escape spoke of lights under the soil and machines that breathe. Meanwhile, seismographs across the world recorded pulses growing steadier, stronger. The earth was no longer ringing like a bell. It was drumming, each beat resonating through the crust at exact intervals. Researchers in Japan overlaid the data and froze. The intervals matched prime numbers. This wasn't seismic noise. It was a sequence. The metallic fluid that had first oozed from the fissures was now branching further, carving veins through the countryside. Farmers miles from the epicenter reported their wells turning black, the water shimmering with unnatural sheen. Cattle refused to drink. Those who touched it described a faint vibration, as though the liquid itself was humming. Samples rushed to labs in China, evaporated instantly when exposed to open air, leaving behind only fine crystalline dust that rearranged itself into hexagonal patterns. The United Nations Security Council convened in emergency session. Theories clashed. Some argued this was a catastrophic side effect of the nuclear blast, a geological chain reaction that could devastate the region. Others whispered darker possibilities, that North Korea had stumbled upon something ancient, buried, and asleep. The phrase extraterrestrial artifact slipped into closed-door briefings. Publicly, officials dismissed such claims. Privately, they admitted they had no better explanation. Then came the footage that no one could deny. A Chinese satellite, tasked with monitoring the site, transmitted images that leaked within hours. They showed Mount Mantap's summit cracking open, releasing a column of bluish-white light that lanced into the sky. At its base, structures were visible, geometric ridges, symmetrical arches, and patterns etched into stone that could not have been carved by nature. The mountain wasn't breaking apart. It was unfolding. Across the border, villagers panicked as the hum intensified, rattling windows and shaking the ground. Entire communities fled south, convinced the end of the world was near. In Pyongyang, sources reported frantic evacuations of high-ranking officials. Whatever had been buried was beyond even the regime's control. And then, the first global consequence struck. At exactly 14:07 UTC, power grids across East Asia flickered and collapsed. Entire cities in China, South Korea, and Japan went dark for several minutes. Planes lost navigation systems. Satellites in low orbit spun out of control before stabilizing. When systems came back online, engineers discovered something chilling. Every digital screen, from phones to air traffic monitors, displayed the same image for 17 seconds. It was a symbol. Concentric circles radiating outward, intersected by jagged lines. Analysts later confirmed it matched the patterns etched into the beacon, like fissures around the mountain. The display was accompanied by no text, no numbers, no explanation, just silence. But those who had been dreaming since the detonation knew the meaning. Reports came in from across the globe of people describing the same nightmare, a colossal shape stirring beneath stone, its movements shaking the ground, its voice humming through the earth. And now, with the world staring at Mount Mantap as it cracked wider with every passing hour, one truth became impossible to ignore: North Korea hadn't tested a weapon. They had broken a seal. By the fourth day after the detonation, the crisis had grown too vast to conceal. Mount Mantap's peak was collapsing inward, but not in the way geologists predicted. Instead of crumbling into rubble, the summit split apart in clean, angular lines, as though guided by design. From the fissures poured light, cold, blue, white beams that shot skyward and flickered like searchlights across the cloud base. Entire valleys glowed at night, turning the remote mountain into a beacon visible from space. International media could no longer be silenced. Satellite images flooded online forums, showing geometric patterns spreading across the ground for miles, etched into the earth as though carved by an invisible hand. Analysts who studied them noticed something terrifying: the designs weren't random. They matched star charts, but not of the present sky. They reflected constellations as they appeared thousands of years ago. Inside North Korea, chaos reigned. Intelligence sources suggested entire villages near the mountain had been evacuated or erased. Survivors who stumbled across the Chinese border described seeing giant doors sliding open in the rock, releasing waves of heat and sound. Some claimed they saw shapes moving behind the light, silhouettes too vast to comprehend. Most were dismissed as hysterical, but their accounts all contained one chilling consistency. They said the mountain was hollow, and something inside was waking. Meanwhile, global consequences intensified. The electromagnetic pulses that had begun as local interference now rippled across continents. Power grids failed in sporadic waves from Moscow to Los Angeles. Submarine cables shuddered under strange surges of current. GPS systems faltered, throwing airliners off course. Even the Schumann resonances, the natural electromagnetic heartbeat of the Earth, spiked wildly, as though the planet itself was being rewritten. In Seoul, a panel of seismologists presented their findings. The pulses emanating from the mountain weren't random tremors. They were too clean, too structured. When converted into audio frequencies, they formed repeating sequences, prime numbers, mathematical constants, messages. "This is not geology," one scientist declared to the hushed room. "This is communication." Governments scrambled for answers. Washington deployed additional spy satellites to watch the mountain in real time. Beijing massed troops along the border, though none dared step closer to the epicenter. Moscow offered to assist in containment, though its warships quietly repositioned across the Pacific. At the United Nations, diplomats shouted across the chamber, each demanding to know what North Korea had awoken, and whether it could spread. But perhaps the most disturbing revelations came not from officials, but from ordinary people. Around the globe, thousands reported identical dreams, standing before a colossal structure beneath the earth, hearing a low hum that vibrated their bones, watching light seep from cracks in stone. In every dream, the same phrase echoed, though no one could explain how it translated so cleanly across languages: "We are returning." Back at the site, Chinese reconnaissance drones captured footage too disturbing to suppress. The fissures at Mount Mantap had widened into cavernous openings, revealing structures deep within, towering columns of metallic stone latticed with glowing veins. At their base, enormous mechanisms turned, grinding against one another with the sound of distant thunder. Analysts compared the footage to engines the size of skyscrapers, dormant for millennia until the nuclear blast had jolted them alive. Within hours of the leak, social media ignited. Hashtags spread across platforms: Fen North Korea Seal, Fae Awakened Mountain, Fae We're Returning. Religious leaders called it prophecy. Skeptics called it hysteria. But the footage was undeniable. Mount Mantap was not a mountain, it was a vault. And then the vault spoke. At exactly 11:11 p.m. local time, every radio frequency across the region went dead. Instead, a single tone played, low resonant, shaking walls and rattling glass. It lasted for 90 seconds before fading. When the static cleared, analysts piecing through the signal discovered it was not a tone at all. It was layered sound, compressed into a single blast. When slowed down, the message unraveled into words. 2 words: shield broken. The world froze. It wasn't a test site anymore. It was a doorway, and something on the other side had just realized it was open. The phrase "seal broken" spread like wildfire. Within minutes of the broadcast, intelligence agencies confirmed that the signal wasn't limited to East Asia. The same pulse had been picked up by antennas as far as South America and Australia. Worse, fragments of the message were rebroadcast back from space, bouncing between satellites that had never been designed to transmit such frequencies. It was as though the signal had become part of the planet's atmosphere, impossible to erase, impossible to contain. Inside North Korea, the vault continued to change. Mount Mantap's slopes cracked wide, revealing cavernous chambers lined with symmetrical ridges of stone and metal fused together. What drones captured next rattled even hardened military analysts' colossal, gear-like structures turning slowly, grinding against the earth with seismic force. It was not collapse, it was activation. The mountain was less a geological feature and more a machine. A construct that had been dormant for longer than recorded history. The structures released heat plumes so powerful they created their own weather. Storm cells formed directly above the mountain, thunder growling across the region. Villagers miles away fell to their knees as the sky flashed with unnatural lightning, blue, white bolts that struck in perfect rhythm with the pulses beneath the earth. No one could deny it anymore. The nuclear detonation had not just damaged the mountain, it had jump-started something buried within it. World leaders convened in emergency summits. In Washington, military strategists debated surgical strikes with bunker-busting weapons. But simulations showed a chilling result. Detonation on that scale could destabilize the machinery, releasing energy too great to contain. Beijing demanded restraint, fearing the fallout would annihilate millions along its border. Moscow suggested cooperation, but its fleets were already repositioning into the Pacific, clearly preparing for more than diplomacy. The United Nations issued calls for calm, but their words carried no weight. The situation had slipped far beyond politics. And then came the second message. At exactly midnight, every device within 1,000 miles of the mountain, from radios to smartphones to even disabled electronics, lit up simultaneously. Screens filled with the same concentric circle symbol etched into the earth around Mount Mantap. Beneath it, 2 words appeared, translated across dozens of languages. What rise? Panic ignited worldwide. Stock markets crashed, riots broke out in several cities, and churches overflowed with terrified crowds. Scientists debated feverishly, some convinced this was an automated response from an alien relic. Others were certain it was an ancient human technology lost to time. But one fact united them all: the scale of the activation was far beyond anything Earth had ever witnessed. At the site itself, the situation spiraled out of control. Soldiers positioned along the perimeter began abandoning their posts, some stumbling into China, their eyes glassy, their voices trembling as they muttered fragments of the phrase, "We rise," in languages they did not know. Others simply disappeared, swallowed by fissures that opened beneath their boots. The few drones that survived long enough to transmit showed soldiers standing in rows near the fissures, heads tilted back, as if listening to something only they could hear. And then the ground gave way. The peak of Mount Mantap split open entirely, collapsing inward to reveal a vast hollow chamber that glowed with searing light. Rising from the abyss was a structure unlike anything humanity had ever seen, a spire of metallic stone stretching hundreds of meters into the air, its surface alive with shifting patterns of light. It pulsed like a heart, each beat shaking the ground, each flash illuminating the night sky for miles. Surrounding the spire were enormous archways half buried in rock that began to hum with resonance. To observers, they looked like gateways, doors waiting to open. Global sensors went haywire. Power grids flickered worldwide. Magnetic compasses spun uselessly. Submarines deep in the Pacific reported sonar echoes as if vast metallic shapes were moving beneath the ocean floor. It was no longer a regional event. It was planetary. And in the command bunkers far from the mountain, a terrible realization dawned. The nuclear bomb had not created this. It had only triggered it. The vault beneath Mount Mantap was not a prison. It was a machine built for one purpose. The AI systems tasked with analyzing the pulses finally offered a translation. The symbols etched into the spire weren't random. They were coordinates, not pointing inward, but outward, into space. The detonation hadn't just awakened something under the mountain. It had sent a signal into the stars. The 6th day after the detonation was unlike any other in human memory. The vault beneath Mount Mantap had gone from a geological anomaly to the most terrifying object on Earth. By now, the spire that had risen from the mountain glowed so brightly it could be seen from space. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station reported the entire Korean peninsula flickering like a beacon, bathing the clouds below in eerie blue light. The world waited for collapse or explosion, but neither came. Instead, the spire pulsed steadily, its rhythm echoing in seismic waves that circled the globe. Researchers noted a terrifying consistency. The pulses were growing stronger, and their timing had synchronized with the rotation of the Earth itself. "It's locked in," one physicist whispered. "It's using the planet as an amplifier." And then, the signal left Earth. Radio telescopes across the world, from Arecibo's successor in Puerto Rico to massive dishes in Australia, suddenly screamed with interference. The source was pinpointed North Korea. The spire was transmitting directly into space, a beam of concentrated frequency so powerful it drowned out distant stars. At first, scientists believed it was broadcasting blind, scattering energy in all directions. But hours later, astronomers discovered the beam had narrowed, pointing directly at a star system 40 light-years away. The realization spread through intelligence networks like fire.